In traditional societies throughout the world that consider themselves civilized, one essential aspect of being civilized is respecting elders and superiors. And we see up to the present time here in India and actually in most of the world, in Asia, the Muslim world, I'm not sure about Africa, probably. Actually, pretty much everywhere except the so-called civilized West. It's an essential part of society to respect one's elders and seniors, and to insult superiors is considered very wrong. There are historical examples of the terrible effects of insulting superiors, especially Vaishnavas. We see that Daksha was offensive to Lord Shiva, and as a result, Daksha was killed, his whole sacrifice was destroyed, and those who supported him, his followers, were also destroyed. The sons of Marichi laughed at Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma had actually behaved in a very wrong way, but because the sons of Marichi laughed at Lord Brahma for that, those sons had to become demons. Much more recently, in the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramachandra Khan insulted Lord Nityananda and Lord Nityananda's followers. Ramchandra Khan was very powerful, aristocratic, respected, opulent, but as a result of insulting Lord Nityananda, he and his whole village were destroyed. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has especially warned against offending Vaishnavas, giving the example of a beautifully cultivated garden which can be absolutely ransacked just in seconds by a mad elephant. The example is that someone can cultivate Krishna consciousness very carefully, and their heart can become very beautiful with the flowers of devotion. But somehow or other within that heart, if the mad elephant of offense to devotees enters, very quickly it can spoil everything. Throughout Chaitanya Bhagavat also, we have many warnings to not offend devotees. So we have to be very cautious. There's one beautiful verse in Chaitanya Bhagavat. Kahare na kare ninda Krishna Krishna bole, ajay Chaitanya shay jini bekhele. That if one doesn't insult anyone and goes on chanting Krishna Krishna, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is unconquerable by any means, any other means, becomes easily conquered. Dhane jane panditye krishnere nahi pai keval bhakti bosh Chaitanya Gosai. Another beautiful verse, a little off the topic from Chaitanya Bhagavat, just came to my mind. By wealth, by having many followers, by being very learned, we cannot attain Krishna. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only comes under the control of pure devotion. But he doesn't like, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't like Vaishnava aparad. So we should be aware of this, we should be cautious, we should fear Vaishnava aparad. However, this very pertinent and meaningful fear of Vaishnava aparad can be invoked to crush any pertinent and relevant inquiries into policies and actions of spiritual leaders or doctrinal issues. If someone may be a junior in terms of the devotional hierarchy, but they see something which doesn't seem right being done by superiors, or they hear some philosophy which doesn't sound quite right, so they make inquiries which are not very much palatable to the superiors, or they point out some uncomfortable truths that need to be said, and they're told, shut up, be quiet, don't make offenses. So it is important to not make offenses, but this principle can be misused. Reverence for spiritual authority is required, but it becomes problematic when used to suppress discussion of topics that should be discussed. And fear of committing offense is invoked to preempt or silence relevant inquiry. Devotees should have respect for superiors, but that reverence towards superiors should not be turned into intimidation. Discussion is quelled or constrained by fear of spiritual ruin. Don't say that, be quiet, don't make offenses. Rather than the discussion being based on loyalty to the truth, loyalty to the principles of Krishna consciousness, loyal to the principles given to us by Srila Prabhupada. There may be so many instances. It may be that, well, one relevant topic is on that of should or should not devotees in female bodies be given the role of initiating gurus as a norm in ISKCON today. And some initiating spiritual masters in ISKCON are very much for this, some are very much against this, and there is at least one record of someone who's for it, warning his disciples, many of whom don't feel very comfortable with this idea, that to not accept this idea is offensive. So that is an instance of using fear of Vaishnava aparad to quell discussion. There may be cases of financial corruption, moral corruption among seniors. Can you point it out? Be quiet, don't make offenses. Should be pointed out. Misuse of the principle of Vaishnava aparad is when a senior or a supporter of a senior invokes the principle of offense. You'll fall down, to suppress legitimate questioning. Instead of addressing the issue at hand or the substance of an argument, dissent is framed as inherently dangerous, spiritually harmful. Now, it's true that seniors are to be respected, and the faults of seniors are generally to be overlooked, especially if they're minor faults. However, when there is an issue which seniors or their supporters don't want to be discussed because they just want to, because it's a doctrinal issue which is complex and they're not confident of establishing their position, or it's a question of behavior, someone in a senior position is misbehaving and they just want, don't even think about it, just don't think, keep quiet, just shut up. So the discussion ends without the issue being addressed. Questionable behavior or policies should be questioned. But if it's just shut down without any discussion, shut up, don't make any offenses, then what's happening is that the issue is being overlooked. Principles, reason are thrown out, and it's just invoked that you're going to fall down. So there's no honest examination of the issue. That means that any critique or doubt about the behavior or policies or philosophical position of any senior is silenced under the guise of protecting devotion. For instance, if there is financial corruption or moral corruption in a senior, that is going to affect the devotion of those serving under that senior. But to cover that up, if they say, your devotion will be spoiled by making an offense by questioning me, they're turning it around, and what you need to do to protect your devotion, they're telling you that it will spoil your devotion. So there's no honest discussion on philosophical or doctrinal issues. There's no intellectual engagement. It's forestalled by fear, which is misuse of the principle of Vaishnava Aparad. No dialogue, just intimidation, substituting fear for understanding and obedience for conviction. It's weaponizing the concept of offensiveness, which is meant to safeguard devotion, and by weaponizing this Aparad principle, it becomes a means for maintaining conformity. So there can be no genuine openness, there can be no authentic spiritual dialogue. Principles and integrity get subordinated to just shut up. It calls for blind faith and unquestioning obedience, even about doctrines which deeply influence our life. We have no choice but to silently submit even when we see things seriously wrong. We're not even allowed to ask about it. You're not even supposed to think about it. It's choking the intelligence, making us into zombies. Intelligent people, they're not going to go for this. They can see it's just used for consolidating power. Then it becomes like corporate culture, where you can't question superiors, even if something's going wrong. In a healthy corporate culture, if a subordinate puts politely a doubt about something, as long as it's not completely stupid or it's not insulting, but if they put a doubt about something, then the senior or the superior should accept that this is something relevant. Of course, the junior should be careful, not that just spout out anything that comes to their mind. It should be thoughtfully and respectfully presented, but in healthy corporate culture, feedback, intelligent, concerned, informed feedback from juniors is appreciated. And if that is crushed in the name of shut up, you're junior, you don't know what you're talking about, it makes an extremely unhealthy and what's called a toxic atmosphere. Generally, leaders prefer followers like sheep, it seems, people who don't ask awkward questions. Once, this was quite a long time ago, I heard a temple president say jokingly, but with a touch of frustration at the devotees he was dealing with, he said he wants devotees to be like robots, and they just do whatever you say without asking anything. Nowadays, you probably could get robots like that, but they wouldn't be devotees. You can get robots to clean the floor and all kinds of things, but they won't be devotees. Or you can pay devotees to do devotional service, but if they're paid, it's not really devotional service because they're serving the money, not doing it for devotion, all in all, as Srila Prabhupada pointed out. But if you pay them, they're not going to raise objections, right? They need the money. Srila Prabhupada wanted philosophically astute, intelligent, awake brahmanas. This is a voluntary movement, and devotees are independent-minded. They've left behind the material world and all its prospects, and they're doing that out of their choice, out of their decision, after using their intelligence. If you can convince them, they'll follow happily. And having brahmanas in Vedic society is essential to check any iniquities or despotic tendencies among the administrative rulers, the Kshatriyas. So to have brahmanas in Vaishnava society is central to the checks and balances system. It means brahmanas, devotees, should have a keen, informed, scriptural sense of what should be done and what should not be done. Pravriting cha nivriting cha janana vidur asuraha. We don't want sheep, but we don't want cats either, inasmuch as sheep can be easily herded, well, if you know what you're doing. Not that everyone can be a shepherd. But it's impossible to herd cats. They're so individualistic. Now, in one sense, we want sheep more than cats because our whole process is sadhu marganugamanam, following the path of sacred persons. But, as the saying goes, we should surrender with our intelligence, not that we surrender our intelligence. Got that? We should surrender with our intelligence, not that we surrender our intelligence. And in the name of individualism and open-mindedness, we don't want that kind of always looking for faults, obnoxious nitpicking and rabble-rousing that seems to be the main pleasure in life for some supposed to be devotees who are clearly not experiencing any happiness in their heart from Krishna consciousness. To be free of this intimidation, to have open discourse without shut up, keep quiet, don't make offense, without that kind of attitude, it's vital for healthy spiritual communities, because true devotion thrives on inquiry and reflection, clarification of doubts. There should always be give and take in Vaishnava society. Misusing this principle of not making offenses, it discourages any reasoned examination of principles, issues, situations, and it erodes discrimination. The whole of Bhagavad-gita is to give Arjuna the discrimination to know how he should act and how he shouldn't act. So authentic faith distinguishes between malice-driven offense and inquiry-driven understanding. Offense is when we try to point out faults just because we want to show someone's wrong, and it's not offensive if we, with a good motive, we want to understand better, or we can see that something, or think we see something is going wrong. When discussion is free from coercion, then we can all combinedly honor the parampara, which means the transmission of truth, which has to be via understanding. It cannot be simply drilled into our head through fear. That's why Krishna spoke Bhagavad-gita. At the end, he told Arjuna to surrender. He didn't do it in the beginning. When Arjuna understood the teachings of Krishna, then he surrendered to him. Krishna didn't impose it on him by fear. Maybe you've experienced this, that seniors are trying to control you, not out of the best of motives, rather than protect you. Maybe you've done it to others also. Or maybe you've been perceived as doing that. It's difficult in Kali Yuga, and doubt is there. We may suspect the motives of others. It's not that every time we have to question everything that superiors do. I'm not saying that, but I'm pointing out the misuse of the principle of Vaishnava Aparad, which is a factor in Vaishnav society, or dysfunctional Vaishnav society. The gopis of Vrindavan were prepared to go to hell if it would please Krishna, if they could serve Krishna better. In the same spirit, a devotee can accept personal risk, maybe even the possibility of committing an offense, if by doing so he protects or advances Lord Chaitanya's mission. Can be a very dangerous thing. But sometimes some things have to be pointed out. Following in the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan, and don't think that we're somehow elevated to that platform, but artificially, but following in their footsteps, we should try to bring out the truth, even if we're told we're being offensive for it. Like the gopis, that becomes an act of love and courage with the idea of serving Krishna. If someone tries to shut us down by saying it's offensive, but we feel we have to say something to uphold dharma and safeguard the integrity of the mission, then cautiously or carefully, maybe cautiously isn't the right word, but with all consideration, we may say what we know needs to be said. I suppose it's not for everyone to do this. It does require some courage, but in this way, we should overcome intimidation. And it may be that some who invoke this offense principle, if we, as politely as possible, but it's not always possible to be polite, if we oppose that, that can be our expression of loyalty to Krishna and his pure devotees, Srila Prabhupada, and all the parampara. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo